No, don't bother. Don't bother.
Yeah. You have any of these cards in your car?
Yeah.
You do?
What card?
One
For
for this event.
Yeah.
Too hard to get to your car?
No.
Get a couple of them.
Welcome everybody. Thank Allah for everybody's attendance. We're happy. We're excited for another event. We thank Allah for another opportunity to speak life into the soul of the people who are turned on by guidance. So we greet you, all audience, the audience here in attendance and the viewing audience online, with the greeting of the prophets of Scripture. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be on you. Now this greeting that we have, this is a rich and pregnant greeting. It's not like saying hi. This is the greeting of the prophets in Scripture, as I said, and when we use this greeting, we are beginning our interaction with each other by recognizing God as the one who facilitates the best situation between us, the best situation for our connection, and we are acknowledging that we are holding each other accountable for giving our best support to the dignity and the best expressions of our shared life. Our shared life. We're blessed to be here again in Newark, New Jersey, a city that is of vital significance for the shared life that we have as a people, upholding the tradition, the guided tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Newark, New Ark, New Ark, New Covenant. There's a special disposition in the believers of Newark that served as an invitation for Imam W.D. Muhammad to teach a little differently than he taught in many other places. There's a certain receptivity in the spirit of the believers in this space, such that the Imam felt comfortable openly addressing issues, openly addressing concepts, openly addressing things that were of vital importance to our collective life, that many people in other places that he taught were not able to appreciate in the way that people in Newark were. So in many ways, what happened with Imam W.D. Muhammad in Newark set the tone for the rest of the country. And we have a leader today succeeding in the tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad who is not deviating one iota from the tradition and the leadership direction of Imam W.D. Muhammad. So again, we're happy to be here. We're looking forward to the continuation of a successful progression. We have a few speakers lined up, and I want to introduce you to them. If I didn't mention it, would everybody make sure you silence your cell phone, silence your devices? The first speaker that I'd like to introduce to you is a man that I have great respect and appreciation for. He's from the Baltimore area, and he is a product of our community, the community associated with Imam W.D. Muhammad. This is a man who has great memory for detail. His perspective is very broad in his consideration and very focused in his direction. His thinking is sober, and his thoughtful words are always easy to appreciate and value. I bring before you our brother, Imam Frank Shaheed.
I greet all you here and the audience and the internet with the greetings of peace of Assalamu alaikum. We always begin with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. So I am happy once again, as Imam Duan had said, to be back in Newark, New Jersey. This is a special place in the country, not only just for Al-Islam, but just for the country in general, especially in this Newark and New York area. So this is a very respectable place, and a place that's really going to do a lot of great things for us in our future. So I want to begin with this wonderful religion that we call Al-Islam. Very wonderful, very sober, very easy religion. This is a way of life for us. Allah has blessed us with this way of life, and it has given us direction in our life. So what is Al-Islam? It's typically called the way of peace. We have certain rituals that we do to enhance ourselves into the world. We have basically witnessing that God is one, and there is no other in the rule of the heavens or the earth but Him. We pray every day. We make devotions to God every day, and we turn our attention towards the emphasis of what our life should be in those prayers. We also give charity. We give alms, as we call charity, oftentimes to homeless situations or situations that could develop the life as well. We also fast during the month of Ramadan, the special month in which the Quran was revealed. In this particular month, the Quran was revealed to Muhammad the Prophet, may the prayers and peace be upon him, to give us a guide for our life. And at the end of that, we celebrate that successful month. And the last pillar is the pillar to Mecca, to Hajj, the house in Mecca, and we call that Hajj, or the pilgrimage. We go to the center of our focus, the center of our attention, and we communicate with all of mankind, to understand what issues that plague us where we are and throughout the world. That is Al-Islam. Very simple, very easy way of life, very natural way of life. Now, who has established that for us? As I said, Muhammad the Prophet, may the prayers and peace be upon him. A man who grew up in the Arabian desert at the time, many, many centuries ago. But this particular individual, he embodied the hopes of the people that he were a part of. And when he saw distress in that situation of where he was born and where he grew up, he turned and looked for an opportunity to remedy those types of situations that plagued this situation, plagued this community, plagued this country. So he retreated and he elevated. So the retreat was the elevation, because he was looking for assistance and looking for guidance. And it was Allah who blessed him to give him answers to address the issues of his people and of his time. So it was Muhammad who freed the life to find this direction and advance it to the conclusion that's favorable and pleasing to Allah. This began in the city of Medina, and it spread to Mecca, and then it spread throughout the world. So in that small encapsulation of Muhammad the Prophet, and that small encapsulation of what we call Al-Islam, how does that translate for us? How do we see it? How do we see it where we are? Al-Islam is a public expression for us. It's nothing that draws us away from the environment. It's a public expression. Muhammad the Prophet had a public demonstration, a public expression to understand what the conditions were of his people. And because of that, Allah blessed him to help his people and free his people, to give his people the best expression. Now, aren't we under that same rule here in America? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So do not accept the whispers of the whisperer who tells you to retreat, to look at your situation as a local situation that's only for you. It is not for you. It's for the world. And if you decide to accept that, then you are under the rule of Shaitan, not under Muhammad the Prophet, who established that for us. And who did Muhammad the Prophet get that emphasis from? Where did he get the confidence to stand and say these things? From our second father, Ibrahim. He follows the way of Ibrahim. And the Quran says, so set your face as a person firm in religion. That is a direct response to Ibrahim. And this setting your face is you're turning away from foolishness, and you're turning away from those things that take you away from the life. So that's what Muhammad the Prophet got his strength from our second father. So now, here's some language that's very familiar to all of us. The wilds of North America. That sounds familiar? Yes, it does. Now, who tamed those wilds of North America? Who did that for us? It was the guided leadership that did that. Ultimately, in the embodiment of our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. It was he who made it convenient for us, who civilized this savage of a country for us to have expression. Al-Islam is our expression, and we should feel confident in that expression. And look how the world has progressed because of our understanding and practice of Al-Islam. Look how it has. Don't diminish what we've done here in America. We shouldn't do that. We should be proud of that. We should be proud of this guided tradition that we have, that belongs to us, but given to the world, for the world. So it's not wholly ours. We were just responsible for its expression. And now the world has patterned itself and made America such a great country. So could it be something so far-fetched? And I know this is kind of being risky here, but is it so far-fetched that when one president who was running for president said, make America great again, was he talking about having that establishment that was brought to us by our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad, when we had that public expression? I don't think it was far-fetched, because our leader reached every height, every avenue, every room, every circle, every corner of this world. So why wouldn't I think he was referencing the greatness of what we have done here in America as Muslims? Now, once again, I ask you to ask yourself this question. If you want to reduce your expression to a corner, to a locale, to a small situation, then I would say you have followed the rule of Shaitan. You didn't follow your leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. Who was his leader? Muhammad the Prophet. Simple, very simple. Isn't that simple? I think that's simple. I think that's simple. So here in Newark, this great city of Newark, we have a speaker today who's coming before us, who, as Imam Duhan has said, has not moved one iota from the traditional leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad, who himself didn't move one iota from the leadership of Muhammad the Prophet. Let that be known. Bring anybody to say anything different, and you will be shut down. Right. You know that's true. So let's wake up, people. Let's understand what's in front of us. Let's take the call. Let's hear the call. You know, our public expression of Al-Islam for most of us is Salat. But in order for you to come to Salat, what has to happen? A public call has to be made in order for you to respond to it. And who made that call in that savage land of Arabia? A person who looked like you and I. That same person, Muhammad the Prophet, made a prayer, peace be upon him, said that he had a dream that in his dream he saw these footprints ahead of him in the paradise. And who was those footprints belong to? Bilal, the one who looks like you and I, the one who was discounted in the history of the people, in the society of the people. Now, isn't that our history? That's our history. Very simple to me. Very simple. But this simplicity came from our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. And that continues in this continuation of the leadership with Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad, keeping us on the same road, going to the same destiny. So with that, I want everyone to understand that this rule of Al-Islam that we fall upon, that we give our discipline to, is only designed to free us and give us the best life expression. And in Newark, we're going to see that expression. And every other city in America is going to see what Newark has done and is going to emulate, because this is something special for all of us. And if anyone who ascribes to this, Allah will bless you in this process. So with that, I will conclude, and I say peace to you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, my brother. If anybody's having difficulty in the back here, could you just move up a little bit? So the next speaker that we have is also coming from Maryland. She is a wife and a mother of 4 daughters. Herself, a daughter of this community, attended the Boston Sister Clara Muhammad schools from 1st grade through 6th grade. And coming from a family of educators committed to community life, she has done much in the way of upholding and advancing that family tradition. She has some significant experience in the classroom teaching the middle grades in the Clara Muhammad schools of DC. A fellow graduate of my alma mater, the first HBCU, Lincoln University, she has a degree in physics and has gone on to use her sharp intellect to make some very impressive contributions to community life. I'm only going to mention one more thing about her today before I bring her up. She is the lead researcher and educational consultant with Building the Right Foundation, and she conducts cutting-edge research in Quran-based educational philosophy and methodology. So with that, I bring before you our beloved sister, Sister Farida Abdul Tawwab.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. So the two speakers who went, prior to me, you emphasized the new ark, the new covenant, where we are, and what this means to us as a people. We're gathered here today by Allah's mercy in Newark, New Jersey. And I come to you as a sincere believer, asking for Allah's guidance as we navigate the turbulent waters that are today flooding our society and drowning our human thought processes. A society in which the waves of emotion submerge logic, one in which the waters of self-interest are drowning the interests of community life. A society in which justice is engulfed by the limited understanding of the human mind, instead of being established on the guidance and signs of the all-knowing. Instead of being agents of salvation, we have become saboteurs. Our arrogance, disobedience, and stubbornness are rendering us deaf, dumb, and blind to the timber of knowledge surrounding us. How do we survive this flood? Just as God sent to Noah the guidance to build an ark of knowledge, he continues to inspire his servants with the wood needed to build the ark anew. Allah explains this in detail in the Quran. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the alternation of the night and the day, and the great ships which sail through the sea with that which benefits mankind, are signs for those who reflect. Noah's ark, or ship, represents the knowledge. Not just any knowledge, but knowledge containing guidance to save the world. The word used for ark or ship in the Quran is fulk, from the Arabic root fa, lam, kaf. According to Abdul Manan Omar's Dictionary of the Holy Quran, fulkun means ships, and falakun is the orbit of a celestial body. Dear believers, we must use the knowledge body of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad to build a fulk, a new ark, in order to sail these flooded waters. We must have yaqeen, a certainty, and a confidence in building this ark upon the Quranic logic found in the guided tradition of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. However, it is not enough to build the vessel. We have to live inside the life that Allah has ordained for us, that Brother Frank outlined for us just recently. The success is guaranteed if we recognize that a ship must follow a chartered path, a path that Allah has already ordained. And it is He who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon. All heavenly bodies in an orbit are swimming. Here, falakun, from the same root, fa, lam, kaf, means the orbit of a celestial body. An orbit is a regular, repeating path that one object takes around another object or center of gravity. An orbit requires an orientation. Those celestial bodies, the sun and the moon, to which Allah calls our attention, they follow an elliptical orbit. This means they have 2 points around which they are oriented. The ark guided by Allah swims in an orbit pulled by the gravity and orientation of two points. These are taqwa, regardfulness of Allah, and jihad, persistent and consistent struggle or effort on behalf of Allah's path. The success is in the orbit. The success is in the movement. The life that the ark secures, the life that the ark protects, is the life that Allah has designed for all of humanity. Keeping the right focus, as our Imam says, keeps the life. And the ships which sail through the sea with that which benefits humanity. Muhammad the Prophet, prayers and peace of Allah be upon him, taught us that the best of us are the ones who are best in their usefulness to mankind. So what do we have to benefit humanity? Within our 92-year legacy of social, moral, and spiritual development, we have inherited a body of knowledge that we can use to remake the world. This body of knowledge, this ark, this fulkun, properly built, will sustain schools, cultural life, economic life, and healthy governance. This ark will reveal and address the corruptions that currently dominate the music, dress, culture, relationships, education, and the very thinking of our society. This new ark will give our young people the true picture of human excellence. This ark will equip them with Quranic logic as the criterion against which they measure every ideology. This ark will rescue the drowning human thought process. So my question today is, will we build this ark? Or will we leave our children adrift in these turbulent waters? Our leader and teacher, Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, taught us that the more our world works to mute human innocence, the more it gives itself to moral corruption of the human thought processes. I am calling on you, especially the sons and daughters of the pioneering mothers and fathers, grandparents and great-grandparents who accepted their identity as righteous Muslims and then devoted themselves to establishing community life. I'm calling on you especially. Will you rise to the challenge of building this new ark? For it is the only way to reap the bounty that Allah has for us. And when you have boarded the ship, you and those with you, then say, praise be to Allah, who has saved us from the wrongdoing people. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Excellent. Praise be to Allah. Anybody who has recording devices, would you kindly put those away, please? So, excellent. So our next speaker, it's my pleasure to bring before you this man who is definitely a purist in his embrace of the way of Imam W.D. Muhammad. This man has spent a lifetime working to restore the dignity of Bilalian or African American men. His energy and spirit does not age. I was blessed to be able to witness him in a room full of young men and present to them a demonstration of manhood coming from the influence that produced some of the most iconic leaders in the African American experience. We call this brother the Professor. He is an experienced researcher in the history of the African American people and our condition, and he is blessed with a sharp eye and a keen sensitivity for what is needed to remedy the ills that we have endured because of our unique history. So I bring before you our beloved brother, Professor Wali Shabazz.
Assalamu alaikum. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah, guardian evolver of all systems of knowledge. Ibrahim, you were right about this thing, man. He has a little gadget up here. I'm gonna have to hold this like a preacher. All right. Okay. Allah ever evolves his creation. In the Quran, we're giving how the baby is formed in the womb of the mother, how societies are evolved, how tribes and nations are evolved, and the tribes and nations are accepted by the creator of the heavens and the earth as a natural process for evolution. All right? East Africa did not develop civilization to the extent of West African civilization. West African civilization, Islamic civilization, was indigenous. East African was not indigenous in their leadership. So consequently, the East Africans, you know, they had Swahili and trade with the Gulf states and Persia, but they did not develop extensive civilization or empire building. That happened with the indigenous West African before we were kidnapped and brought over here. So West Africa had indigenous leadership. All right. America was formed, now Columbus came in 1492, and it was 284 years before the European evolved into the American and the United States Constitution was born. It took 284 years. The Negro formed and manipulated in America happened between our coming to the society, us being kidnapped and brought to the society, and about 1852 was the formation of the making of the Negro. And in that making, it was indicated that there was teaching, Christian teaching, specifically to the slave. This is documented. There's a book called Teaching the Slave How to Be a Good Christian. And in that book, the aspects of Moses freeing his people and any revolutionary prophet, as it's put, was eliminated, and we were taught how to be subservient to our slave master. In that process, the seasoning process, we were taught the spirit of rebellion. You know, you can breed in the genetic structure of a human being a certain behavior pattern. So the whole notion now of trauma being instituted in mental health paradigms, looking at why people have mental health issues, they go back generations and can see that a person who's been traumatized passes that genetic chemical down to the offspring. This is science. Young Elijah Muhammad taught that, and it was called mystery. Today it's science. Okay. So we have a condition in our cultural evolution as a people in America to be rebellious. Our first teacher, Farad Muhammad, taught the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad fought rebellion in his leadership. His son was prepared for the development of our community, to take it to the next level. Because when Mr. Muhammad was asked who will succeed him, he said, no one will succeed me. After me comes God himself. That's the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So our flag is the Holy Quran. That's our flag. And the closest, and the Imam had explained it, the closest you can get to God is reading his scripture. So he is following in the tradition of our establishment in America. Now, do you think that tradition just dies when his physical body dies? All people, especially Muslim people, have succession to leadership. They don't fight it. They don't rebel against it. It's a natural process. England just did it. And that's out of Muslim society, where there is a succession in the development of God is ever evolving his creation. So if you're talking about leadership as local, African American people, you are committing suicide. We have a strong tradition of freedom fighters amongst our ethnic group. Strong tradition of freedom fighters. But what happened, Imam Ibrahim, and you corrected me on this, that tree of freedom fighters amongst the Negro group in America, a seed was dropped from that tree and a new tree was established in 1930. And that tree is taking root, or as Aunt Nay and them say, root. And trees grow down before they grow up. Trees, if there are a bunch of oak trees outside, they feed each other from the roots. One gets sick, the other one feeds it nutrients. You don't even see them feeding each other. So not only do the trees give us photosynthesis, they feed each other when they get sick. A new tree has formed in the wilds, as Imam Muhammad said, of North America. And that tree has developed deep roots. And we have influenced the behavior not only of our people, but we've influenced the behavior of the American public. The influence of Imam W.D. Muhammad and the influence of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad can be documented. All of this interfaith interaction. That's us in our history. All of the concept of health foods and dietary concerns. That's us in America. Buy black. That's us in America. Black businesses. That's us in America. The credit wants to be given to Malcolm Shabazz, but the credit goes to his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the evolution of that process is carried through Imam W.D. Muhammad. So that tradition just dies? A culture just ends and everything is kumbaya and everything is leadership? Remember, it took America 284 years to form a nation. We ain't even 100 years old, our community. Allah is ever evolving his creation at his pace. So this is a process. And in the process is struggle. That's how you get to the destiny. You got to struggle. And remember, we have been trained and conditioned for rebellion. Proof. No slave rebellion was successful in the continental United States. Nan. We had them, but there was always one on the plantation that told Massa, boss, they get ready to do something. That's the conditioning. Haiti, yes. Brazil, yes. Jamaica, yes. Cuba, yes. Continental United States, no. Because of the seasoning of the slave. Look, other people had the conga drum coming from Africa, the djembe, and it transformed into the conga. We lost the drum here in America. If any slave were Muslims and they had the look that some of y'all have in your face, they were told, watch him, he's a dangerous nigger. And if any slave could read, they cut his thumb off to let every other Caucasian in that environment know he can read. So we have been cut off. We are not African, maybe in our genotype, but in our phenotype, we're Fulani, Hausa, Mandinka, Serer. We're an amalgamation of different African tribes. We're cut off from our root, and we have to reestablish ourselves as an independent entity in America and thrive and reach their humanity. Why not us? How come it got to come from someplace else? Why can't it come from us, the most deprived ethnic group in the history of human history? And leadership is local. You out your mind. We are the purists in our tradition following the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad.
That's right.
And we have consciously and intellectually come to a conclusion that there's one from amongst us who has the superior knowledge to help us go to the next level. And after us, there'll be somebody else that is picked from the group that they decide that's the one. That's how you evolve in the world as a society, as a culture, as a heritage. You have to have leadership. But we so hurt as a people, our egos are so destroyed in America that we want to have localism, tribalism. Islam came to eliminate ignorant tribalism, and you stand on the best that our community represents. So with that, I'm done. I'm ready for the leader. Assalamu alaikum.
That's why he's the professor. So I wanted to make a couple of announcements before I bring up the next speaker. Very few brief announcements. We have an Islamic studies class and discussion. It's led by Imam Abdul Malik and is held free of charge every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's conducted virtually and can be accessed anywhere that you have internet connection. All of the classes are recorded and archived for the benefit of those who participate in the class, and you can register at eamspeaks.com. That'll give you access to the live classes, and that'll give you access to all of the recordings in the archives. Next announcement I have is we have another event coming up. On October 30th, the believers here in Newark are hosting the second annual Muslim American Leadership Day observance. This two-day event, acknowledging the birthday of Imam W.D. Muhammad, will have a culture night and a public address focusing the emphasis on the picture of the life that Imam W.D. Muhammad was pointing us to. So be on the lookout for more information about that. That's coming, October 30th. All right, so the next speaker that I have to bring before you is the one who's coming to introduce the Imam. He's known as a worker and a dedicated follower and supporter of Imam W.D. Muhammad here in Newark. I've come to know a few things about him personally in these past few months working with him, just along the process of working together in support of the excellent leadership that we have. What brings a man to tears speaks volumes about what his sensitivities are. And this is a man who is sensitive to the condition of the Bilalian or the African American people. And he places a high value on the leadership direction of Imam W.D. Muhammad. This is a man who knows the value of what we have as an inheritance and is actively devoting himself to the preservation and advancement of its establishment in the world. Coming before you to introduce the leader is our brother Imam Asim Mubin Nasheed.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That is, with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Again, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out from our fourth Sunday address. I'm not going to be long, but I do want to make a few points, and that is that this city, which I represent and feel strongly that the sensitivities that exist here are sensitivities that are necessary to galvanize us to move forward in the world. Those of us that feel that leadership is local, you don't understand what our leader, Imam W. Muhammad, had in mind from the very beginning. In the very beginning, those that have been here recognize that he said, we have an obligation and a job to remake the world. If you think just in the terms of remake the world, you have to have in your mind, you have to have the concept that this world is not a local idea. This concept of al-Islam is a universal idea. This concept of al-Islam is far-reaching. This concept of al-Islam is ever evolving. It is that thought and those sensitivities that bring me to search, and I've been blessed, I believe, to find one who direction has the right sensitivities, the right experience to take us onto a new level of understanding al-Islam in the biggest sense, in a universal sense. I'm not going to be long because I know we've been waiting to hear our leader, but I've committed myself to moving along in this area and to bring about, or attempt to bring about, a bridge between those who understand and those who don't understand what this is all about. Again, those who say that the leadership is local, they've been falsely sensitized by Satan's influences, and also by things that were put in place to check them until the leader was ready. Many of us, I'm not going to go into all that, but remember that. I personally have been in this community for over 50 years, and I know, see, feel, and understand the sensitivities of our people here in North and abroad. Imam Muhammad's being here, most of us know that he found great pleasure and found a force, a sensitivity, a spirit in Newark that wasn't seen and felt anywhere else. And many of you can attest to that. His tradition, this guided tradition that we have now, is carried on by one who says, who Imam Muhammad has said himself, and I'm going to quote it. I have to acknowledge the man who has done more than any other person to help me get the correct picture of Muslims and Imam W.D. Muhammad to the public of America and the world. My son, Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad, I thank God for him. This was Imam Muhammad's quote in the 2002 Islamic Convention. Many of you were there to hear that and understand that we so desperately need correct leadership, new leadership, evolving leadership, experienced leadership. I have not, and I'll conclude with saying this, I have not found anybody else that I feel has the correct sensitivities and puts the correct emphasis on the guided traditions that Imam Muhammad has set and the direction that we need to go and how we need to get there. I haven't found it anywhere else but in the leader that I'm getting ready to present to you, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad.
Our greetings, our peace. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be on you. The praises for God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We witness that nothing is to be worshipped except him, and his command is absolute. Nothing is to be joined with him. This is our faith. Nothing is to be joined with him in his rule of everything that has been created, everything that he has created. And the benefits for his human creation come by way of the spirit in us to be appreciative and grateful to him. And this spirit of gratitude, thankfulness, is exhibited in the leadership of Muhammad the Prophet. The prayers and the peace be on him. And all of his works and the far-reaching implications of his leadership are all expressions of that gratitude. So in witnessing to him as the messenger of God, we are witnessing also to what is the proper disposition that we should have toward our Lord Creator in recognition of his creation of us, and that he cares deeply, that is, God cares for us in our human life. Human life and the direction of our human lives and the direction for human existence in society. It is a great pleasure for me to be here today in Newark. And Newark is a very special place in our community reality. And its significance reaches even before the time of Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership, even before his time, the time of his father, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Newark had its very significant special importance. And the leaders during that time were particularly successful in introducing Islamic language and identity into the spiritual understanding of the people of this area. Newark, Orange, East Orange, and Irvington, and Patterson, and all these areas that are associated with Newark. And I came to know it because I was a student. I was a college student at a school that is a suburb of Newark area. And I had a roommate and teammate. He was a basketball teammate. We played on the basketball team together, who was from Orange. And he was a very well-known graduate of the high school in Orange, New Jersey, and very highly regarded recruit for basketball at that time. And he was my roommate. He was a year ahead of me, so I was a freshman, he was a sophomore. And he took me to his home in Orange to visit his family. And all the people that he greeted and that greeted him had Muslim names. And I was intrigued by that. Growing up in Washington, D.C., I didn't have that experience. And so I asked him about it. And I was 18 years old, and or no, 17 years old, and curious about the environment and curious about this influence, you know. And I had already accepted to be a Muslim, so obviously I'm familiar with these names, and he's explaining to me that no, not all of them are Muslims. They like the names. And he's trying to explain to me why they like the names. That impressed me. It touched me in a way that was different from even the environment that I grew up in Washington. And I found that to be unique, even unique from or distinct in comparison with other cities in these United States of America that have been impacted by the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Chicago, Detroit, and New York. And I lived in Chicago. Never lived in Detroit, but I spent a lot of time in Detroit, and visited New York many times. But never did I see anything like that. Not in Washington and other places I visited. I never saw where the general public, the general population of people, were so inspired, I would say, and spiritually energized by a social message that they chose to be referred to by language that was identified with that religion or with that way of life or that concept. I never saw anything like that before. And they had a name for it. They said, he told me, he said they like the attributes. That's my attribute. You meet someone, their name would be, you know, Joe Wilson or something, Joe Smith. And he said, but my attribute is, he would say my name, and then he would say my attribute is Muhammad or Aziz or Yusuf or Salim or something, you know, something that's associated with Islam. What explains this? What explains this? I was very curious about it. What explained this in the spirit of the people of this area? And I thought about it, and not just then. It influenced me, it touched me then, but over the years since then, from that time until now, that's what, 40 years. I'm 57 years old. 40 years that has been turning over in my mind. What is it about that particular area of New Jersey? Because you don't find it even in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, a lot of Muslims, in fact, more Muslims in Philadelphia concentrated in one area than anywhere else in the United States of America. But you don't see that influence go beyond the Muslim community. Not so in Newark. Not so. And I believe that had to do with the spirit of the leadership during the time of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the spirit of the people. And that foundation provided for something very special when Imam W.D. Muhammad became leader, and he needed an environment in which to express certain important concepts, ideas coming from the influence of Islam that were aimed at addressing humans' social aspirations. He needed an environment that would support that message and support his understanding so that he could deliver that message, not just to the people in Newark, but deliver it generally. And Detroit and Chicago didn't provide that in the same way that Newark did. If you listen to Imam W. Muhammad's teaching in Detroit, Michigan, it's different, it's distinct. If you listen to him speak in Chicago, it's distinct. You listen to him in Newark, it's distinct. Something important as a particular emphasis was on display when he would preach from Newark. So our attention now to Newark is in that spirit, recognizing that as a part of our tradition. And I'm not surprised that the people of Newark, not necessarily represented in this audience, though I know that many of you here are from this area, but I do believe that the support for what I represent even exceeds the number in this audience today in Newark. I believe that. Once they get to know me and understand what has been said has truth and falsehood in it, they will see a connection and a continuation addressing that special important distinction that was enabled in Imam W.D. Muhammad's message because of the sensitivity of the people of Newark. And as time goes on, our strength and confidence as a community of Muslims with a mission will be strengthened in this city. And because it's strengthened in this city, it will be strengthened all around. Imam W. Muhammad used the situation of support, spiritual support in Newark, so that he could address matters for the whole life of the people. So I'm following that. I'm following in that, and I'm following that. I'm continuing in that. I'd like to make mention of my appreciation for the brothers and sisters in Newark who have supported us, supported me, and are responsible for us having this meeting here today, and also are making important plans for our big meeting next month here in Newark. I appreciate them very much, all of them. They are courageous people, people of strong faith and commitment and determination and great courage and sincerity. And I can tell you that though they are people who are respected in the area for supporting the good, no matter where the good is, they support the good. They will say, as individuals, that they cannot feel comfortable to be associated with any particular local leader or masjid. It's in their spirit. These persons had devoted themselves to Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership. And if they found that that was being represented properly at this masjid, they would go to that masjid. And if they found that there was trouble for that in that particular place, then they would not support that place. So they didn't align themselves with any particular imam in the Newark area, but they were associated with the life of the community as presented by Imam W. Muhammad in his teaching and in his spirit. And when he passed away, that was a void in their spirit, a void for them, and they looked to have that void filled again. Now, you might say, well, it's satisfactory to have Imam W. Muhammad's teaching available to us in the public spaces through recordings and books and on social media, etc. We have access to his teaching and to him because of that, because of the preservation of those things. But in addition to that, it's in the spirit of human life to be able to identify in the present with the same directional concerns that were established, that brought you to a certain awareness to begin with. So when we think of Prophet Muhammad, who lived on this earth 1,400 years ago, we don't have any trouble acknowledging leadership in his tradition after every generation. We don't have any trouble with that. We'll see a Muslim leader, or we'll have sensitivities expressed by, well, we'll wait till the entertainment stops. I like that music. Yeah. It's nice. This technology can control us. It'll steer us, you know. We're supposed to be steering it, but it'll tell us what needs to be done, what should be done, and we have to get back in charge of it. Allah says that He has regulated everything that has been created, that it follow its own logic that has been established for it by Him. All right? And He has set these things for our perception so as to educate us, so that we can regulate our affairs. But they are regulated, they have been created with logic so as to feed us, sensitize us in the way that God wants us to be sensitized. And then behind that come one who wants to reconfigure things in the world so as to confuse us, to misdirect us, to take us off of the direction that God intends for us to have. And that's the enemy of man. And the enemy of man is, his influence is in the technology. His influence is in the technology. The technology is intended for good, to serve man, to serve us, to help us. Human beings looking at the regulation of the natural world, the material world, and how it's regulated in the way that God has regulated it, take from that influence and make devices that help us regulate ourselves, right? But the influence of the enemy of man is in there. And this is what the Quran says. The Quran says that the shaitan, or Satan, as the Christians say, Satan, and perhaps people watching us, they're greater, and the numbers are greater non-Muslim than Muslims, so I want you to know the language that we're using. Says that the Holy Quran says that that he is a deceiver, that his works are an illusion. gurur is the word in the Quran, means deception or illusion, and said that the influence of that, though it may be amazing to you, is not truth. It is not truth. It is an illusion. So we have to get back in charge of this human life as God has intended it to be, and human intelligence to serve God's plan has to get back in charge of the technology and direct it. You'll be texting something, and I've done it before, and I looked at what I know I put in, and something else something else said it went to something else. And I, thinking I had said the right thing or what I intended, I pressed send, and I'm looking at it, and that's not what I said. And the person who received it said, "What does that mean?" I know you all have experienced it. So we have to get back in charge of no fault on the brother. I understand. We all get in that trouble. I know he didn't intend anything. Yes, so I wanted to acknowledge the people here, the organizers, and in particular the leader among them that I have so much great respect for and love for, and the brothers and sisters support his leadership, and that is Brother Imam Mubin, who introduced me. I appreciate him very much. Thank you. And thank all of you who support him and support us. And I know it's not easy. Not now, not yet. It's not easy, it's difficult. The circumstances of our community are under such heavy confusion now that things that you know to be correct and valuable and true are made cloudy in the interest to serve a few who had a design on our message, a design on our progress as a community, to serve small interests. And Imam W.D. Muhammad, he gave us language and hints to help us qualify ourselves to address this problem in this time. He gave us hints that such persons have limited, marginal, even what we could call parochial concerns, and he called them local concerns. They have local concerns. And the hope was that they continue to be localized, and that they not interfere with the works of the universal mission, that they not be permitted, that they be locked up in their own local situations. And we have to allow them to stay in those locked up circumstances. No real assistance can come to persons who insist upon a small picture of human life, a small picture of human social aspirations, a small picture of what human community is supposed to be. Islam is not supposed to just serve Muslims. It's intended to promote an awareness and a commitment in that awareness to serve the whole mission of human life, to serve the direction for human life that God intended, and to the Quran says that Prophet Muhammad was given something that he safeguarded, that he made it safe. Made it safe for what? For mankind. Made it safe. In his hands, it's safe for mankind. In his demonstration, it's safe for all people to access it, to draw benefits from it. And that's what our Islamic life is supposed to be. We're supposed to be the model community that safeguards ideas, concepts, influences, knowledge for the benefit of human life, in spite of or in opposition to the deceptions that have been introduced into the life by the enemy of man. In the Prophet Muhammad's teaching, it is given that when the human beings are obedient and that they have accepted the spirit of obedience, that the shaitan, the devil, is locked up in his locale. Think about that. So this address today, you know, when I give these topics to Imam Ibrahim, who is my assistant and my great helper and partner, he knows that they evolve. I'll give him one topic and then I'll look at it a day or so later and say, well, we're going to change it a little bit. And finally, after a while, it comes to right where we want it to be. And so I might write down what the topic was the first time I gave it to him that has the general idea, but it might not be as specific as what you all have gotten. But I know that the topic is Islam, a religion of perfect morality and perfect and complete morality. That was the topic. And I may have had something on my mind when I gave that topic to Imam Ibrahim to give to you all here in Newark. And maybe my mind changed over time. So I don't always recall what it was that I was thinking about at that time, but the topics themselves are universal in their understanding and application. So even though I may have adjusted something over the month or so, or 2 months or whatever, still the concern is consistent. Islam is a religion of perfect morality. And what is meant by that is, firstly, it is not to make commentary on, or I would say, a satirical commentary, like some may use it, on religions or religious message or religious identity other than Islam. That is to say that someone else's identity is not perfect morality. It's not a commentary like that. It is to identify what is necessary to get the best results from what is truth. Truth stands as truth. It has no defeat in it. Nothing can defeat truth. But there are perceptions, there are perspectives on truth that are themselves trouble. To say that Islam is perfect morality is to perceive truth as it is to be perceived according to what God intended, and to act upon it in the best possible way so that it will be preserved as an example, a model for human reasoning, planning, conduct, behavior, action. you think of morality, you may think this world will have you thinking sexual morality. Not necessarily. That's not what's being implied. Not necessarily. It is. It's there. Anything that needs the influence and direction of moral code is included. But that's not to say that that's what we're emphasizing. We're not emphasizing that. When we think of someone being immoral, the first thing that comes to mind is sexual immorality. That's not what we're talking about. You know, there are worse things than sexual immorality. Betrayal of leadership is a worse thing. To betray the truth that comes from a tradition of leadership and to claim that it's saying one thing or that it's emphasizing one thing that it is not is a worse sin, a worse trouble in the life of human beings and society than sexual immorality or the question of sexual morality. So we have to get out of our minds. If we're going to be persons accepting responsibility to advance human society, you have to have a certain spirit to accept that responsibility. And so you can't be trapped or held back or weakened or be laden down with guilt because of a scheme of the shaitan to make you think that if you looked at a sister or a brother looked at a sister or a sister looked at a brother, that somehow you bordering on some kind of sexual immorality. Yeah. The society is such in such a hypocritical state. Such a hypocritical state now. Confusing. Completely confusing. You have a natural motivation to be drawn to beauty. God created it. He created an affinity in all of us to be moved and attracted by beauty. In beauty, intrinsic to beauty is morality because God created it. Everything that God created, He created good. This is according to the teaching of Islam and also the teaching of other religions. God said it's given in the Bible that what God created was good. And this day it was created, this was good. And that day this was created, and it was good. And so on and so forth until the sixth day when man was created and said it was good. This is the Bible. So something has happened in the life of human society that make us question what we have a natural affinity for. And we will make an accommodation for what we know confuses the life in order to feel like we're socially acceptable. We will make an accommodation for it, knowing that it's confusing to the life, knowing that God has created male and female. Male and female. And by virtue of the relationship between male and female, the race of humans continues. And without that relationship, it cannot continue. But if you make an accommodation, make a change, then you can justify genetic engineering. You can justify CRISPR. That's what they call it. That's the technology they use now to manipulate the genes, to edit. And look how they come at you. They come at you with, we're going to use it to cure sickle cell anemia. That's what this technology is going to be used for. And I'm sure that's what it is being used for. And I heard reports that genetic editing has been used to help people who had sickle cell problem. Go in the cell and correct the problem. But that ain't the only thing it's being used for. That's not the only thing it's being used for. And so the interest for us to progress as a human life in society is put at risk if you don't have a correct morality. Where you say, yes, this technology, this science, this knowledge, God has created it, it exists, and it has to be used for good. But what determines the good? And who determines the good? So God says in the Quran of the Islamic community, that people following Muhammad the Prophet, that you are the best community. Brought out for what? Ukhrijat linnas. Brought out for the good of all people. Brought out for the good of human community. That is the focus. Brought out for the good of human community. So this is a perfect morality. That is not just intended to serve the black people or the African American community and their important and necessary social aspirations, but in the same measure that they must be respected for the life that God intended for them to have, it must be recognized that that is in the context of the progress of human life. And that there have to be communities of persons sensitive to the need to protect what God intended to be protected for all human life. And if you have been turned on to it as an African American person, it's not just to be exercised for your benefit. You have to be turned on to the responsibility that makes you understand that while you're serving your life, your best life, that's not the ultimate expression of good. That in serving your best life, your life must be a model for all people's lives. And they can take from your formula and from your discipline and apply it to their situation. So African American people coming to understand something about the Islamic message through this line that we have ultimately serves mankind. Ultimately is intended to serve mankind. Can't fall short of that, or else it's not complete. It's not perfect. You can't call it Islam. If your Islam just served the black community, it's not the real Islam. There wasn't nobody preaching Islam on this earth or talking about anything called Islam in the modern, in the time when modern man can measure that message, except that it be traced to Muhammad the Prophet. So if you discussing Islam and you don't have any discussion about Muhammad the Prophet's leadership, then your Islam is false. There's no percentage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. I know that's a heavy influence in Newark. There's no percentages. It's a 100%. If you got 5% of it, it's a whole 95%. And I guarantee you that within that 95% you missing is the morality that you need to apply that 5 that you got. You got to have the right disposition, the right spirit. The language has to conform and be aligned with truth. And truth is not truth unless it serves the whole. Praise be to Allah. Okay. So, morality. I don't know that there's a term necessarily in the Quran that we could say is morality in the way that is generally understood. The term is generally understood. The Quran says, and I'm a Muslim leader, so I'm giving you what Allah says, what God says in the Quran, which is the book revealed to Muhammad the Prophet. It is called the guidance to the God-fearing. And it also is called, clearly, Hudan Linnas, Hudan Linnas, Hudan. And then the grammar, you pronounce it Hudan Linnas. But Hudan, a guidance for humans, a guidance for human community, a guidance for al-muttaqin, a guidance for the God-fearing. So I'm quoting from this book, and in it, it says that Muhammad, the Prophet, is upon a tremendous, grand, powerful standard of behavior. Khuluqun azim. And so, if we follow in the, I guess, general understanding or picture of what is meant by the term morality, then we can say that it's speaking of a direction for conduct, a direction for thinking, a direction for behavior. And so the Quran says of Muhammad that he, if we're using this reasoning, that he is upon the most powerful, far-reaching, perfectly situated reasoning, thinking for human behavior. Khuluqun azim. And his wife, Aisha, who became an authority, this should be understood, that Aisha, may God be pleased with her, the wife of the Prophet, she was not an imam. She didn't have that title, but she was perhaps the first, and maybe we could say foremost, of the learned people in Prophet Muhammad's tradition and leadership. Aisha. I don't think that any scholar of Islam would differ with me on that point, that she perhaps was the highest of the scholars. And she said, when asked about him, she said that his morality is the Quran. He is the Quran living. He is the Quran walking. This was Aisha's statement when asked about him. So, in thinking on morality, question of morality in Islam, it must begin with proper regard for God. It must begin with proper regard for God. Because if we follow Aisha's influence, saying that her husband, Muhammad the Prophet, is the Quran living? And the Quran itself says it is a guidance for the God-fearing, for the regardful. Then to appreciate Islam as a message of morality, you first have to have a sacred regard for what God would have you regard. Okay? Taqwa, this is the word in the Arabic language and in the Quran language. It means, it's translated, can be translated or has been translated, fear of God. Fear of God. And what does it mean, fear of God? How does fear of God manifest in the life of a person of faith? It manifests in the life of a person of faith that if I go against what God wants, my life, my existence will be disturbed. And so I am afraid to do that. I'm afraid to go against anything that would separate me from God's support. This is taqwa. And this is what is meant by muttaqin. The people who have this in them, this motivation in them, this spirit in them, this degree of sincerity and purity in them, the Quran is guidance for them. Hudan lil muttaqin. Guidance for those who want to do right. Guidance for those who want to be regardful in the proper way. And not just regardful of God in the general sense of a person of faith, but also regardful of things that God would have you treat with sacred respect. So, family must be treated with sacred respect. Punishment must be treated with sacred respect. The same word is used to describe what human relationship should be with the punishment of the fire. Same language. Attaqullah, regard Allah, to regard God. Attaqun nar, regard the fire. Regard the fire. Sacred regard. Sacred respect for the obligations of human community. That which is necessary to build the life. Sacred respect. Not the respect that you give a doorknob. Doorknob is a convenience, right? It's a convenience. I can open the door without the doorknob. No, sacred respect, something that you give relationships. And human beings form relationships with everything in their environment, and there should be a proper attitude, spirit in which you approach that relationship. So even your relationship with the doorknob can be regulated by perfect morality. Yes. Say, well, what is he talking about, doorknobs? Listen, you think that the creation of a doorknob did not come out of the sensitivity in a human mind and human spirit to exercise some service, some benefit to man? Every single thing that exists in the human environment is a reflection of knowledge, and is also a reflection of whether or not the person who created it had the proper morality. Everything. Did they have the proper respect for human life when this thing was brought into being? Or were they wanting to comment on the deficiencies in human life? Or were they wanting to trouble, confuse, or weaken human life? So Islam, as a message of perfect and complete morality, says for all times, people who are regardful of God are regardful of the benefits that come from everything that God has created, and how it is exercised and practiced and applied by my hand and by the community of man who accepts responsibility for that relationship with God. This is high important stuff. This is what brings you from being a slave to passion, a slave to lower sentiments and sensitivities, to being master. Master. of your existence, a master of your existence. You know, this is one of the nicknames of Muhammad the Prophet. One of the scholars, not one of the scholars, but the scholars themselves, they refer to him as the master. Sayyid. Sayyid is the word. Our master, Muhammad. Master. Mean that he has slaves? No. Mean that he obeyed his own good nature in obedience to God. It was asked of him, do you have a jinn? He said, yeah, but I made him a Muslim. My inherent feelings and sensitivities aren't unregulated. I have regulated them according to obedience to God. This was his statement. So we're not a slave to the influences that come in the world. We're not a slave to the deceptions of the shaitan. We manage this and we master this. And the shaitan, God says of him, he gives language. Shaitan doesn't speak in the Quran. He doesn't speak in divine revelation. He has no voice. We see what he says because God has mercy on us to show us his plan and his scheme. And so he reveals to us what he says, what his reasoning is. And he's in his reasoning, he says, God, you have put me in the wrong. This is what the shaitan said. He said, God, you have put me in the wrong. So, as a consequence of that, I'm going to make wrongdoing seem good to these people, to this human creation that you have made. I'm going to make them reason that wrong is good. And then he says, that's big right there. That's huge right there. But then he says something even bigger than that. Bold. You know, that's his attribute. The attribute of the shaitan is that he's arrogant. You know, think himself to be big and powerful and superior to man. And superior to God's plan in man. And he says, so it's elevated. Everything he says is exaggerated and elevated. And so the next statement he makes is even more egregious. He said, because you put me in the wrong, I'm going to make them think that wrongdoing is good, and I'm going to put all of them in the wrong. All of them. He said, Ejma'in. This is the Quran. And then he makes a statement of truth. He says, accept the servants. Accept your servants who are clean and straight. Accept your servants who are clean and straight. Meaning what? Accept your servants who have accepted perfect and complete thinking, correct knowledge and its application, its correct spirit of application. The correct attitude. So when I greet you, I say, Assalamu alaikum. That's not enough. That's not enough. Just to say the words have to bring something behind them, even if I don't say the additional words. The additional words have to be reflected in those three words, or that expression. Assalamu alaikum also has to include the mercy of God and his blessing. Even though I don't say it. I don't say I have to say all that language. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I don't have to say all that. I don't have to say all that. Assalamu alaikum should bring that. Peace be on you should have that in it as an influence. My spirit for you should include what God intends for you. Anything less than that is imperfect and incomplete. So the assalamu alaikum that comes with no knowledge is an oppression. It's a horror. What the world calls peace, not justice. It's a sedative, a drug. Put you to sleep. Not real peace. No. The real peace must include an address or a sensitivity to address the need for justice. And you can't come to that conclusion except that you're thinking in a more complete and perfect way. You have to have the intent to serve life in the way that God intended for life to be preserved and to be served. It can't be incomplete. It can't be short of the hope of the fulfillment. The Quran is our guidance. Without it, we are left to kind of a precarious, uncertain existence. Even the people who don't know anything about the Quran, don't know anything about Muhammad the Prophet's leadership, don't know anything about the Islamic community in America, and Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Imam W.D. Muhammad, if they have in some way been able to progress with their human life in the world as it exists, they have been influenced by those things. Whether they know it or not, they have been touched by those things. The two men we saw crossing the street on the way here, old men, they're older than me. You don't believe somebody told me I was a senior citizen. I couldn't hardly believe that. I have two of my daughters right here. I couldn't hardly believe somebody told me I was a senior citizen. I've run 5 miles 3 times a week. How in the world are you going to call me a senior citizen? But I am one. But these two men, they older than me. And one of them pants hanging off his rear end, walking across the street. As we coming here to this hotel to speak to you today. And they're having a discussion. I don't know what they were talking about, but I'm looking at their faces, and I know that one was saying something that he thought was truth. And the other one wasn't buying all of it. And he's shaking his head like, no, I ain't going for all that. But the other one was insistent. No, this is truth. This is the real. He's under that influence from the shaitan that says that I will make what they think good. I will make what they think good of benefit only to them in their little small existence, and it will not apply anywhere else. It will not work anywhere else, and they will be in a social condition that they can justify and make sense of in their little small reality. But when the world look at them and say, what the hell is that?
Right.
You're looking at the African American in Newark. Say, what the hell? But you talk to him, he got 5% of it. You can't, there's no more to get. 5% is the whole thing. Isn't that how them two jokers look walking about? They look like they had the whole thing. I doubt if they had 5%. They might have had 0.5%. This is the deficiency and the influence that comes to weaken our life, that was adjusted and changed and influenced to do better, to improve by the guided tradition, what we call the guided tradition. You know that, I don't know that language was being used before I used it. I don't think it was. And I know that there will be people who question it. They'll say, well, what right do you have to introduce such language to us. Imam W.D. Muhammad didn't say that about himself, that he was upon a guided tradition. He most certainly did. He said it many times, in many ways, that our whole life is a guided tradition. And that if we take what has influenced us to become who we have become as a community and diminish its importance and place other people's perceptions of that life as a higher importance on us, then we will be following what they perceive to be guidance and what the whole world perceives as Islam. That is incorrect. That's why I use that term, to say that what we have is as legitimate as any of the best expressions of Islam that ever existed on this earth since Prophet Muhammad's time.
Sure.
That's why. To emphasize it in us, to bring that as a conviction in us, that we stay the course to what belongs to us, that has come out of us. That has come out of us. For what purpose? Not for just the benefit of the black community. Ukhrijat linnas. It has come out of us for the good of all people. It is our sensitivity in this expression of perfect and complete morality that changes the conversation, changes the discussion about what the emphasis of race should be in America and what our leaders should be talking about when they're speaking to the African American community about race. If we don't have this influence, we don't have this charge, we'll be taken off. And we will be emphasizing things and doing things as a reaction to the political reality of America that have nothing to do with human progress. And we'll be thinking we're serving our life. And we'll be using language like black this and black that, black bi black, and thinking we're doing the job. And I'm not saying that those who use that language are not doing good. I believe they're doing good. But it'll only be for a short time. It won't be sustained because the logic doesn't support it. The universal logic, the requirement to advance the cause of mankind is not completed. It is not perfected with such sensitivities. That's why Imam W. Muhammad, it was necessary for his leadership to emerge from his father's influence, to bring it to its universal and its most efficient and promising destiny. Now, I'm giving you some language you ain't heard before. Or if you heard Imam W. Muhammad, you heard it. But I'm giving you language that he would expect to be given in his name 20 years after him. Now, that's what I'm giving you now. If he were here now, and I know there'll be people troubled by what I might say right now, I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. If he were here sitting in this audience right now and all of you were looking at him, he would be pointing to me.
Yes, sir.
This is the iteration of my teaching in 2022. Just as he was the iteration of Muhammad the Prophet's teaching.
Right.
This logic and reasoning is an extension of his influence and his leadership. It is his voice. It is his language. It is his reasoning, and it comes from that which he drew support from, which was faith and guidance. And it has manifest in me now. Upon what logic? Upon his authorization. Upon his prediction. His prediction. Not someone else's prediction. Their prediction of me was that he would languish in prison and disappear. That was their expectation. But that wasn't the nature of his description. No, a mission was drawn out not just for me as an individual, but for a time, 20 years in advance, beyond the space of his physical existence, that his message and influence and leadership would continue, it would live, it would influence and impact society in a way that he envisioned, that he dreamt. And it would be the conclusion, it would be the satisfaction of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's intent, that we would have language and understanding and leadership in the world in its most confused time. Yes. In the time when scientists, scholars of logic are confounded. They don't know what to make of human life. They don't know what to make of Donald Trump's influence. They don't know what to make of the human life that has been influenced by that mental disposition, spirit, and attitude. They don't know how the life has been so troubled that it can't read that kind of corruption. They are confounded by it. Not that it's to be only associated with him and his influence. He's just a name, a label for it. It's just a label for something that happened in the life of humans. And centuries from now, the person, the individual, won't even be remembered. It'll just be a term in language that reflect or point to a kind of confusion in the life of humans. In the same way that Benedict Arnold is associated with treason, Trump's name will be associated with mass confusion in the human life. And they're translated in all different languages. And it will be understood that this was a moment of complete and utter confusion and lack of confidence in what a human being is supposed to emphasize in their life and in their world. And what we're addressing as a concern of the direction for a perfect and complete morality is man's social life, human beings and how they should exist in society. That's what we're addressing. We're addressing the social aspirations of human communities, how we should interact with one another, what rights we have to respect under God, and to understand the connection between how we arrive at those rights by looking at the human life itself as God intended for us to perceive that life. That's what we're talking about. We observe the human life and the development of the human life, and we're to draw lessons and knowledge from that so as to treat the ills in human life. God intended for us to learn from our interaction with one another. He says that he has created us from a male and a female, and then that he separated us or scattered us into situations, social situations. And he labeled them. He labeled those social situations. And in the reality of those social situations is knowledge. And it's not just basic knowledge, it's high knowledge. Lita Arafu says he has made you in this condition so that you will know each other, so that you will appreciate each other, so that you will respect the social aspirations in each other and measure the goodness of those things and apply them to your own reality, so that it will be an example for others. It will be a support for others in their logic. And that is what makes you know one another. You will see the common themes of excellence, the common themes of goodness. You will register those things and you will support them in one another. And you will decide upon a common language that addresses or that describes their role in your progress. That's the unity of man on this earth. You know, the Quran says that you are to complete the Hajj. Yes, that you are to complete. This is Quran language. You are to complete the Hajj. You are to make the Hajj perfect. The Hajj meaning what? The Hajj is referring to the great assembly of human community. The situation and condition in the spirit and the psyche of human beings where they are assembled because of God's invitation, and they are assembled according to the disciplines that God has created and authorized, and that they are obligated and regulated to recognize their responsibility to respect the humanity of their brother or sister. And that recognition has to be satisfied. It has to be completed. There is the recognition that we have to satisfy the purpose of our creation. And then there's also the recognition that the creation itself has been created for purpose. So we have an entity that has purpose. That's one perfection. That's one completion. But that's not satisfaction. Satisfaction comes in not just the recognition of a creature with purpose. Satisfaction comes in addressing what satisfies that purpose, what is fulfilled, how that purpose is fulfilled. So God created Adam. He is a human community. He is bombarded with the realities that in some ways confused his life. But that is not the completion. The completion is Muhammad in him. The completion is the step toward fulfillment. So that in spite of confusing circumstances in the environment in which he lives, in spite of conflicting ideas that present themselves as truth, he can reconcile his role. He can reconcile, in spite of the confusion, his importance. He can reconcile that the only opportunity for him to have success as a creation or as an existing creature made by God is to obey the purpose for which God created him and to obey the guidance that God gave for that purpose. And that is satisfaction. And that is completion. And that is fulfillment. And that is a perfect morality. So yes, Al-Islam is peace, but it is peace with an explanation. Our greetings are peace. Our identity is peace. Muslim means one who accepts the order of peace. We say, peace be upon you. The word itself that describes our religion means peace, or suggests peace, or implies peace. But if you look at the Muslim world, and you look at Muslim leadership, and you look at what they emphasize, you would hardly think that we had anything to do with peace. So that tells you that something has been corrupted. Right. Something needs to be addressed. Something needs to be satisfied. Something needs to be perfected and completed. You understand the need for addressing this? Yes, sir. I read with some man, he said, Islam is peace, is a religion of peace. I'm sure he read what we're going to do today, Islam, the religion of complete and perfect morality. I'm sure he read that. And then he said, well, I'm going to address him. I'm going to say Islam, the religion of peace. Yes. Well, you need our understanding to complete your statement. To complete that statement, you need what I'm teaching today. Because your Assalamu alaikum, I ain't trusting it. I don't know what's influencing it. And I'm not just speaking of that individual, I'm speaking of the influence from which that individual comes. It's a whole world of Muslim leaders. I heard one leader, he said so many words before he started speaking in English. And I speak Arabic. I understand Arabic, and I can speak Arabic. And I'm listening to him, and he's a native speaker of Arabic. And he's going so fast, I couldn't pick up everything he said. I could pick up some of it. But the point is that he wasn't giving any respect to what he was saying in Arabic. He's just saying it as a kind of a ritual expression. So if he's not respecting it, how am I supposed to respect it? So right behind that, you say, Assalamu alaikum? You started in confusion. You didn't start in order. You started in confusion. So now your Assalamu alaikum is your conclusion? No, I'm not following you. That's your presentation? Your peace is confusion then. What you offering me in the name of peace and in the name of an Islamic identity is confusion.
Right.
We're in the guided tradition.
Right.
We're coming from a tradition to clear these matters up. And I'm speaking to you in Newark, New Jersey, new arc, new opportunity, a new situation, new presence to satisfy the agreement between God and man. Yes, that's Newark, new arc. Arc of what? The relationship between man and God. Ark of the covenant, the relationship, the agreement, the promise, the obligations that are sacred. That God, you have given me existence, and I owe you my gratitude. As a benefit of this existence you have given me a space for grand dignity. A powerful dignity upon which I can build my life and correct and address and defeat the influence of my enemy that wanted to take me off the path of this in all of his schemes, which included plantation slavery. Am I not W.D. Muhammad's successor?
Yes, sir.
If you can't see it, your eyesight is needing some adjustment. You most certainly can feel it, because you can't separate yourself from the sound of my voice. The sound of my voice carries that resonance that connects you to your original purpose, meaning, and dignity that was expressed into the ears of the world in a language that was intended to free man from all would-be slave masters, all would-be oppressors. I'm in that tradition. I'm the next one in that tradition. And there will be many more after me. But conclude now, in your mind, that no matter what your design or thinking is to defeat this, it will never be defeated.
Right.
It is truth
That's right.
from the Almighty,
Yes, sir.
who revealed Scripture to his messenger. And as an aid to his messenger, created a people who themselves would be the embodiment of resistance to all manner of oppression.
That's right.
And that they would come into their mind and come into their language environment, come into their sensitivities, a spirit and a reasoning that would save man, that would save his opportunities, his possibilities, his destiny for all time, and would be an example of how to defeat the schemes of the shaitan. That's the tradition I belong to. That's this tradition that I succeed. And I hope for and pray for clarity in your spirit and in your mind. Not just you all here, because you all are with me.
That's right.
And you're going to take back what I say
That's right.
to these stupid imams.
That's right.
You're going to take it back to them and say, hey, you need to sit there and listen to this brother. I don't need to listen to him. What I need to listen to him for? He's the best of you. Yes.
That's right.
You deny me, you deny your best aspirations. You deny your best language. You deny your best aspirations and language. And you deny your best possibilities for reasoning in this world. Yes, that's what Imam W.D. Muhammad represented for us. Do you know that the civil rights movement would not have any successes for its political agenda or its civic agenda were it not for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's presence?
Right.
They would not have known how to fix their argument were it not for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad saying that he wanted to dress his people up in a new dress. They would not have known how to reason with the political system if they did not have that perspective. So in the same way that this world can't advance without all of the messaging that God intended to serve human progress, the role that we play is essential.
Yes, sir.
I don't care how small they want to make us, how insignificant they want to make us look in our own eyes. Our message is the message.
That's right. That's right.
Pray to God that we are successful. I believe that Imam W. Muhammad is praying to God to send his angel to us, his angels to stand alongside us, his angels that come from him in his command and his authority on the throne, that he has asked Allah to send them to aid us now in this time, not just for our own benefit, but for the success of Muhammad's mission. Praise be to Allah. Thank you very much. Peace be on you. Assalamu alaikum.
Right. Praise be to Allah. So we will close out officially with the dua of purification and purpose, the dua of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Oh Allah, we cannot manage this life for ourselves, not without you. Please make our life what you want it to be, what you prefer it to be. Do not allow us to act on our own. Help us to act only out of obedience to you. We hear you, we obey you, and we look to you for forgiveness, our Lord, and to you is the destination that cannot be avoided. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.